Hello. Today we're going to delve into the creation and surface intricacies of the Elven race on Patria. We shall explore who created them, why, what their role in the world is, their subraces, and some of their political intrigues. Chapter 1. The Emergence of the Elves. Elvenkind, despite their aged knowledge as a race, is actually more recent than original humanity. As stated in my previous video, humanity was advanced by the aspect humanus as a template for all the other aspects to interact with an exponentially growing race. This enabled the aspects to trial their powers in abundance on lesser creatures, almost as if a science experiment, but on a worldwide scale, with each magically inclined human being a test subject. A large divergence was the creation of the Elves in this time of interaction. The Elves were created through the combined might of Arbor, the aspect of trees, and Aqua, the primordial aspect of water and liquids. Arbor desired a race to equal humanity, for Humanus' realization had struck her soon after. If her representation, the trees, were wiped out, she too would fall and no longer exist. At first, this was a worry that hadn't affected her. Wiping out all the trees on a planet is now an impossible short of a cataclysm. Yet as the other aspect changed humanity with abandon, the race's core survival began to gnaw at her with worry. Humanity consumed countryside. Lands were claimed, forests flattened as tribes learned to create homes and villages. Arbor's reaching fingers were suddenly ceased, then cut back. She felt herself shrinking in strength. Not greatly, but enough to notice. This led to her desire to create a form of protection, something to rival humanity's incessant need for expansion with a wall of denial. Of course, with humanity being the forefront of innovation with the aspects, Arbor found it easiest to interact with the race that was causing her innate issue. And so Arbor conversed with Aqua, explaining her plight. Aqua responded in kind, explicating her worries for the race's pollution of her once great rivers and pure lakes. Together, they poured their knowledge, their passion for wild freedom, their desire to protect the nature of Patria into a collection of small groups of humanity. The results were the Elves. At first, however, the Elves were a failure. Nature-addled and lost to their wandering minds in the deep forests of Arbor, or in the wild recesses of Patria. They had the longevity of Arbor, the flexibility of Aqua in their motion, but they lacked the collective and powerful drive that humanity displayed. If nothing was done, they soon would be consumed by nature, or their intention lost as humanity expanded at speed. It was then that Cognitio, the aspect of mind and knowledge, offered assistance. He invited Praecantatio, the newest aspect that represented magic, and involved himself in the creation of the Elves. He delved into their minds, placing seeds of desire to band with the others of their race and protect the forests of Arbor from humanity, to shield the wild reaches and hide them away. Simultaneously, he directed Praecantatio's new and inexperienced mind to bend their powers onto the race. This caused a catalyst of change. Praecantatio's first interaction with a living being, and the race soon after, was unpoliced. Raw and unfiltered magical affinity pulsed through the Elven race, granting them mastery over magic in a way that humanity could only dream of. While their reserves for energy ran deep in each elf, and their long lives enabled them to attain greater understanding than any human could on how to wield magic. The Elves were a great success thereafter. They hedged humanity away from the forests, creating myth and folklore about their actions. Humanity became scared of the forests, not knowing what lurked within, but knowing that an unbridled and offensive rage protected the trees. With her creations now functioning as intended, Arbor gave them a gift. She blessed the trees they roosted in with brilliant power. Praecantatio again involved themselves in this as well. The selected trees the elves lived beside became known as the Mother Trees, great, reaching emplacements of wood and magic that acted as conduits for the elves. These locations became bastions of defense, enabling nearby elves to have access to greater magic power, but they also had another meaning. The Mother Trees filtered Praecantatio's raw magic, purifying and cleaning it before releasing it back into the world, but this is a story for another time. Chapter 2: The Age of Awakening and its End. With their newfound magic strength, the elves expanded, staking out claims in wild lands with the intent of starting new forests. Their raw power was displayed for all the world to see as they raised mountains as groups, diverted rivers, and birthed new forests that linked back to their homeland, changing the scape of Patria's lands as they proceeded. Humanity was left reeling. Not a few centuries before, they had noticed some of their kind having elongated ears and vacant eyes, who they cast out into the wilderness as burdens. Now, these cast-outs were returning, and changing the lands drastically with magic that had never been conceived of by the human race. The elves had found their stride, and humanity found itself inferior. Now the worries were not of wild animals or monsters in the night breaking into homes, but of the wild-eyed elves descending from their growing forests and changing valleys at the flick of a wrist, negating fresh water by diverting streams at their heed, or shaking the foundations of the ground humanity based their homes on. Elves, however, did have a weakness compared to humanity. Their proliferation was slow. Children were rare and could only be conceived near the Mother Trees. Arbor, intending to bless her people, had instead stunted their growth across Patria. Another occurrence also neutered their strength as a race, making the end of their golden age. Their original home, the great forest of Arbor, suffered something that the Aspect had always feared could come: a cataclysm of incredible proportions. The forest had spanned the entire north of Patria's continents, hemmed out only by the freezing pole that stopped it expanding further. That was until Ignis deigned to visit the world. The primal Aspect descended on the forest without warning, and without realization of her destructive presence. Her intentions were not evil, nor malicious, but the incineration of Arbor's greatest work occurred nonetheless. Within moments, billions of creatures perished, wildlife crisped where it had grazed, elves burned without time to scream. Patria's sky bloomed in the hungry torrent of fire and heat that could only herald the end. Ignis, realizing her mistake, fled almost immediately, her intention completed alongside her accidental damage. She had visited, wanting to aid the newly birthed dwarven race with the gift of fire. She succeeded, blessing them with the mastery over its abilities, but at a terrible cost. The elven race had been reduced to a mere quarter of its number. Their home, a scorched wasteland of ash clouds, corpses, and guttering flames. To the south, a remnant of the forest remained, but it was a small consolation comparative to what they had once protected. This loss fundamentally changed the race. What they had once considered a comfortable and peaceful existence of scaring away or felling the odd human that pushed too far now turned into a desperate fight. Humanity was still expansive, the majority of their homes lost, and now their mother trees were a rarity. As such, reality quickly struck Elvenkind. They had to defend their forest to the last. They had been chosen as the children of an Aspect to fulfill a purpose, and they would complete it with strict indoctrination and aggressive tactics. The splintered race splintered further. The primary rift created by the elves that disagreed with this absolute be-all and end-all ideology. Those that disagreed were cast out as traitors and forced to leave the forests. finding sanctuary in other places on Patria where they slowly evolved into different subraces. The primary remaining group, now named as the Wood Elves, began mustering their numbers, training in magical crafts of war and forest growth to expand rapidly at a later date while protecting the remaining forests. They incorporated the belief of filtering magical strength, designating which magics were viable to be kept as part of their species and which ones should be cast out, prioritizing magic that aided in war, subterfuge, and manipulation, while disregarding magics that inherently suffered in an aggressive elven setting, such as those that aided in religion, art, and beauty. The elves that bore the magical traits deemed unnecessary were again cast out, labelled as useless for the cause and forced to survive without immediate access to the mother trees. With this division and alienation of elves occurring, new factions sprung from the discourse, and internal fighting slowed the recovery of the race. Aqua's involvement in their creation also reared its head in the elves' adaptability to new climates and biomes, allowing groups of outcasts in previously unexplored climes to evolve at an incredible rate over the course of very few generations, when deciding to remain in these new areas. Arbor, not wanting the division to be what ended her race, gifted Mother Tree variants to these secluded groups, robbing the Wood Elves the opportunity of claiming themselves as the chosen of Arbor and being those who controlled the Mother Trees wholly. Chapter 3. The Divergence of the Elven Races. The new subraces of elves created an opportunity for humanity. What had once been a race that ruled over the wilds and controlled them without the ability for parley were now weakened and fractured, but humanity also had the fresh memory of elven supremacy, and feared the race more than pitied it. The fracturing also allowed humanity to push back, reclaiming land and forests for their own consumption, to the great disdain of the Wood Elves, who themselves by this point had united with a leading council, and believed themselves to be the rulers of elvenkind. First of the subraces would be Wood Elves, or simply elves due to their commonness. Wood Elves are known for their lithe forms and sharp eyes matched with shorter hair than most other elven variants, though some forego this conformism and grow their hair long. Their frames tend to be gangly, with long arms and strong legs, while their eyesight tends to bend towards darker environments due to them constantly living under a canopy. This nimble and most numerous of their race reside primarily in the capital city and surrounding forest, while also spreading toward human civilization within the scouting countryside, constantly keeping watch for any hint of invasion or disturbance. With keen eyes and dexterous footstep, they prowl their forests with silent and graceful sureness that comes from thousands of years of evolution and required focusing of skill. Their access to magic is strong, but less so than their other variants, due to the effect their own forests have upon them. The mother trees that surround this elven group impress their magic by unintentionally subduing the populace of elves around them with the want to relax, view the sky and changing elements for years at a time, and be more open to nature. This has led to almost all of these elves to never eat meat, for the effect of these mother trees ensures their love and peaceful approach to the surrounding wildlife. They hold the life of others and of creatures in the highest regard, and have been known to gain affinities to entrapped animals, even mounting strike parties against humans that travel too close to their forests to free cart horses or farm animals. This constant harassment at their borders leads to a well-known anger from this elven variant towards humans. The Elven Council leads this group of elves and technically rule as the absolute authority over elvenkind, though many other variants like to believe otherwise. The Council use the subduing effect the Mother Trees release to control the populace within the Elven capital and surrounding areas. They also believe in the application of filtering out the weak, and have led multiple recorded accounts of banishing many elves from the city that they have deemed as being of weak magical heritage. They believe that only strong magics that are effective at protecting their borders should be able to reside within the capital, and any others should be removed and cast out for their uselessness. This is frowned on by the other Elven variants, but cannot be stopped due to the ruling of the Council's power, though these actions have angered many families within the capital, and have even led to the deaths of a few elves who have stood against the Council's beliefs and laws. Meanwhile, the other sub-races of elves grew in a variety of climates. A select few banded together and pushed back into the now desolate wasteland where Ignis had visited, and found, to their great joy, that some of the mother trees had survived, while wildlife was slowly reclaiming the barren lands and fertile shoots were attempting to push through the ash. Despite this, however, there would be the entrance point of Ignis that would never truly heal, and remained as a burnt husk of its former glory. Here these elves made their new home, their skin slowly darkening to be able to disappear into the ashen background of the environment. Their magical abilities became heightened, living in the place where Ardbord had blessed and where Ignis's raw strength had saturated the land. They became known as the Dark Elves, not due to any maliciousness, as is often believed by humans and dwarves, but rather their darker skin tone and wary disposition, adding an air of mystery and guarded scrutiny to all of their actions. Overall, the Dark Elves are careful and watchful, polite and quiet, but ruthless when necessary. The harsh land they inhabit has changed their demeanours to match it, and though they are small in number, they are a true force when mustered. When approached, they are brash and curt with outsiders, showing only the distinct elven politeness to those they truly know and trust. They can melt into shadows incredibly well, and are usually adorned with Ignis crystals, remnants of the Aspect's entry, that heighten their ability to control the environment they call home. Third, there are the River Elves, a small sect of peace-loving people who desire to remain outside of the horrors of war. Once nomadic, they have now grown to settle around Lacus Somniorum, following the champion of Aqua, an elven woman who leads these people. The huge lake they reside around has hundreds of tributaries flowing into the nearby sea, and is considered by them to be the crowning jewel of Telvon. A race in the small number of thousands, they have been able to reside without war for uncountable years, somehow avoiding conflict between themselves and others. Their magic is focused primarily on mental fortitude, discovery of astral beauties, protection of others, and the improvement of emotional and physical sense between each other. They have fairer complexions than usual elves, which tend to show tanned, mottled skin from time under the canopy, and longer hair that floats about them as if caught in a lazy, swaying current. Tiny, polished stones and braided hair normally adorn their features, while slow, methodical eyes approach each other and newcomers with an aching, but careful, intent to discover their beauty and troubles. The champion of Aqua that leads them has barred all conflict in their ranks, instead insisting that they explain their emotions to each other in long, careful interactions that avoid aggression. This is shown in their speech as a whole, and when met. As long as the visitor means no harm, they tend to take as much time as they deem needed to converse with them. Though infuriating for some faster-minded races or elven variants, this slow and methodical approach must be highly respected. The River Elves will not be rushed, and shall instead carve out a conversation as a masterpiece of words instead of a shoddy and fragmented memory of quickly exchanged speech. Lastly, the evening is treated as a sacred communion with the massive lake, Lacus Somniorum, and is how the lake obtained its name. With such a collection of different magics gathered at intervals around the shore, a leading group of cognitio mages link their minds with the surrounding river elves and enter a trance-like state. This state projects the scenes and experiences of the day for each elf onto the glass-like surface of Lacus Somniorum, and when the ritual is complete, a mirror-like image of melded memories blankets the water, forming one coherent dream of everything that was witnessed around the lake that day, so that all may share in each other's experiences and gain knowledge from it. Fourth are the Deep Forest Elves. These are elves who have forgone the warnings of the council and have followed rumours or the wish to chase danger into the deeper, darker, and more dangerous forests that are held back by the bulwark of the Wood Elves' towns and cities. These elves have gathered into a small treetop city that is suspended above the ground by hundreds of meters within the canopy of the dark forest. Surrounded by dangerous creatures and mythological animals, it is a forest of wonders and dangers that test their very will for survival and exploration throughout night and day. They are shunned by most other elves, for they are the only group who openly accept forest worms, wyverns, and dragons into their midst, obtaining a rare affiliation and peaceful treaty with the creatures who work with them on a day-to-day basis. Though these reptilian animals are not the elven subrace's pets or partners, and are still wild creatures that require respect of the utmost, as some of them are the most ancient and knowledgeable of the deep forest. Deep wood elves praise them as great creatures and count themselves as one of the luckiest races on Patria to share a bond with such a broad spectrum of draconic forest creatures. The respect and gratitude they show to these reptiles is something that most leaders could only dream of from their populace, and any race or elf who insults the creatures are swiftly punished, normally with an arrow through their heart from the darkness of the canopy. As one of the only elven races to eat meat, these elves do so through the need for survival. Dangerous and poisonous plants are copious within the deep forest, and the possibility of finding one that is edible is nigh on impossible. Cultivation of edible plant matter is also extremely difficult, for almost no sun pierces the canopy of the deep forest. Deep wood elves, however, do not take pride in killing animals, and take the life of any creature with great sorrow heavy upon their hearts. Some have even been known to weep as they pull back their bowstring, for they know that the creature before them has struggled as hard or harder than they in such a dangerous place, and will, after the shot is taken, pray to both Arbor and Aqua in thanks for the creature, while also beseeching Spiritus to gently take the animal's spirit in peace. The animal they hunt would have been stalked for hours on end to ensure its healthiness, lack of offspring, and determine the sex of the creature before hunting it. Their respect and knowledge of how difficult life for animals is in such a world leads to their outright hatred of the human, dwarf, and especially reptilian people races due to the unneeded cruelty these races inflict upon their livestock and each other. Though it is a rarity to ever see these elves outside of their deep forests, spied accounts show them to be taller than average elves, reaching up to 7 feet in height. They have longer ears designed and evolved for sharper hearing. Their eyes are wider to see better in darkness and can vary in colour heavily. Their hair is short, or if long, tied back to avoid it snagging on the tight branches, and they tend to have strong legs built for sprinting or dexterously moving through the treetops. Their arms are more sinuous, evolved from the continuous use of bows and movement through the treetops throughout their entire lives in each generation. Their skin is a rather dark brown and slightly mottled to break up their figures with the background of tree trunks, and they tend to have intricate skin paintings depicting their draconic friends in a lustrous green. Fifth would be the Shroom Elves, or sometimes known as Spore Elves. This strange and very rarely seen group of elves reside past the Deep Forest Elves and their home. Almost nothing is documented through human or other racial examinations, but what has been viewed is interesting. As a hierarchy within Elven culture, this subrace seems to be at the bottom and treated as if they are evil. This is mostly due to their living conditions being strange to most elves, and the fact that a lot of the Shroom Elves began as outcasts and criminals. Thieves, murderers, or simply elves who do not wish to conform to other subraces' rules make up the majority of this subrace, and as such are not highly regarded by other elves. Within their own society, it seems to be clan-like, in the sense that whoever has the most skill leads until another takes their place, through better skill or murderous intent. This approach to leadership has reduced over the years, as this race realized that surviving where they live should be more important than bickering and power struggling amongst themselves. Shroom Elves are primarily made up of Venenum, poison and venom, Mortus, death, Exanimus, undead, Draco, dragon, Limus, slime or change, Fames, hunger, and sin-infested mages, though others live among them in less abundance. The magic these elves bear is frowned upon by most races and treated as untrustworthy, which accentuates and bolsters their knowledge that it is unlikely for them to receive help from anyone but themselves. As for their homes, they are probably the most interesting of note among these subraces. Living on the verge of a massive swamp, the Shroom Elves are stuck between the overarching canopy of the deep forest and the dangerous, squalid water of the large swamp, which was aptly named Palus in Caelum Obscuratum, or Swamp in the Darkened Sky in the common tongue. This name was given due to their home being south of the Dark Elves and the continuous black clouds that billow from Ignis's entry point, drifting into the sky above the swamp and forcing it to have much reduced amount of sunlight. The reduced light, matched with the moist conditions and strong magic increasing the lifespan of plant matter permeating from the deep forest, has allowed truly monstrous mushrooms to grow on the border of the forest and the swamp, so large that the Shroom Elves have deemed them homeworthy and begun living within them. Ensuring safety and longevity through magic against spores or growth within these mushrooms, these elves have been able to carve out abodes of incredible craftsmanship within the stalks and caps. Some of these elves have even gone so far as to accept the spores within their bodies and use them as part of their own magic. The appearance for this elven subrace can differ greatly. A few noteworthy similarities do exist, however. Paler complexions, twinned with a softer skin, are apparent within most of them. They have grown to be shorter than most other elves, grown to at most 5.5 feet. This is believed to be due to them living in smaller homes and not needing to use their arms to reach for tree branches or pull bows as often. Their hair is usually short, with but a few exceptions, and their keen eyes have adjusted and evolved to focus on movement much more than other elves, most likely due to their need to watch the water or forest for any threats. This subrace also likes to avoid conflict, instead shying from violence except from within their own power struggles, for their need to survive is forefront in their minds, providing a view of preservation instead of hot-headedness. And now, a rare elven subrace, Moon Elves. They are a scarcity even among elven kind. Many, if not all, have left the cities of their brethren and have ventured out into the world in an attempt to find a solitary, high-altitude point in which they can dedicate themselves to Luna. With the belief that Luna is the mother of all and that she should be respected and worshipped, they forego most of their magical abilities and instead focus on ensuring Luna's happiness, though some tie their magic into their rituals. The rituals surrounding Luna's worship are shrouded in mystery and almost nothing is known, thanks to both the rarity of finding a moon elf and the even rarer possibility of them sharing their rituals. Though it is known that many different forms of worship exist, only one ritual has been documented, albeit through great difficulty, which is as follows. The moon elf sat upon a lone mountain peak, gently lighting a half-circle of candles that mirrored the moon's form above. He then kneeled in the midst of the lit wicks and bowed his head to the ground before lifting both his palms and his face to the unclouded heavens, then seemed to bathe in an unknown purity only he could understand. His breathing was slow, his every move accentuated and gentle, his thin lips and eyebrows caressing the silver light of the moon upon their surface, and his skin radiating a soft, pearlescent white glow. There he kneeled, for a few minutes, before the radiance he gave out withdrew. He looked invigorated, fresh and wide-eyed. The ritual seemed complete, his duty done for the night. However, instead of leaving, he stayed, changing his kneel to a cross-seated position. He then lit incense and remained seated for the rest of the night, simply staring at the stars and his motherly moon above as it distantly stared back. When spoken to, moon elves have revealed little of their connection to Luna, though this doesn't seem to be through choice. However private their affairs with the aspect are, they do not keep secret who they worship when approached, and when asked about their lifestyle, simply cannot seem to project or explain the emotions and actions behind what they do. For them to explain it to someone not of their alignment is a bafflement. It is impossible to explain their connection without the other experiencing it, and to experience it should be carried out in solitude and in adherence to Luna. Therefore, the ability to explain and describe their affinity for Luna is limited greatly. It is believed, however, through the gleaning of hints or speech, that they worship this aspect with the wish to become pure in their mind and body. Under no circumstance will a moon elf disregard their fealty and devotion to the rituals they perform under Luna's gaze, and this is believed to be due to a dark belief they hold. On extremely rare occasions in history, Luna has been known to show a tint of red. Moon elves deem this a flipped state of her emotion, and their rituals are believed to be an attempt to ensure that she doesn't enter this crimson state, otherwise known as a blood moon. It is unknown what occurs when Luna enters this state, but reports of stars disappearing have sometimes coincided with the blood moon's appearance. Moon elf mannerisms mirror that of what is believed to be how Luna approaches life forms, distant and ever watching. They show this in how they approach others, gently but with clarity, backed with a standoffish approach so they do not get involved with the life form's personal struggles. With eyes that assess you quickly and decisively, while projecting the ideal that you shall be educated of a mistake after you have suffered its wrath. They hold little to no hatred of any race or being, instead believing that if you have damaged or hurt someone, or you are of evil intent, that eventually your recompense will come through your own actions. Because of this, moon elves try their hardest not to become embroiled with warfare or politics, instead opting to reside in solitary lifestyles. When rarely seen, these peaceful elves often wear clothes with slight moonic swirls or patterns. They tend to show clasps in their hair or earrings upon their lobes, all made from silver. Their skin seems to be unnaturally clean and pure, untainted by dirt or age, and their eyes almost always reflect a silver sheen. Well travelled through attempts to find solitary places to worship Luna, they usually have good knowledge of surrounding areas and like to help where they can, though due to their rarity in ritualistic ways, these elves are almost never seen by any of the other races. Lastly, there are the Elves of Ravi, or commonly known as Sun Elves by others. They are a group of detached elves to the east of the Dark Elf country. They have separated themselves from the other subraces of their kind and walled out any communication with the outside world. Living in a clustered and small community, these elves mirror their aspect's believed personality in an uncanny way. Rude, belligerent at times, pompous and gifted in the art of looking down their nose at any other race. These elves are hated by almost all elven subraces, and most other races besides. Even less is known about them than the other subraces, due to their seclusion but what is known is blatant. Their view of themselves is shown to match a superior tone, showing that they believe themselves of higher importance than anyone else. A fiery approach to conversation matches this, meaning they will happily speak over and attempt to subdue a speaker when in conversation. Their views are always correct, even if they are not, and if proven otherwise, they become a seething character to deal with. It is unknown how they are so matched with Ravi due to their hidden workings behind their secluded lives. However, a congregation seems to occur within a glade centered in their homestead at midday. Though few have ever been seen, much less conversed with happily, their recorded appearance renders them as being average height for elves and of thicker builds. Living to the east of the Dark Elf County, they have almost no trees around them, and instead make their living within an open meadow area that has gained great lushness from the Dark Elves' dead forest. This has allowed them to evolve more towards running over countryside than among the canopy of trees. Their skin has a lusciousness to it, with a tan tone, and their hair tends to lean towards sandy and golden strands. Eyes reflect Ravi's beaming magnificence, with golds and fiery oranges, though rarely showing a salmonness for the calmer sun elves who reflect Ravi's departure or arrival in the day with a less vibrant colour. Chapter 4. The Legacy of the Elves, the Race War, and their place in the world today. Despite the great rift of their race, due to the actions of the Wood Elf Council, it was these actions that saved them in the coming century. Humanity became acutely aware that the Elves, once a race that dominated the countryside, were a weakened and damaged force, falling from the height of their civilization. A war ensued, devastating and rampant across the land. It was primarily directed toward Elvenkind, as a revenge and scouring of them from humanity. Yet even infighting and the involvement of other races did occur. Humanity believed itself unified against the other races, but ultimately found the dangerous involvement of greed and desire for power from their own race. Their forces eventually collapsed upon themselves. Countries once thought allies made power grabs for locations and resources, effectively blunting the swinging blade that had been flowing towards Elvenkind's throat. The Wood Elves' desperate defense and selective empowerment of their people had been a gamble, walking the fine line of self-genocide while at war, yet, thanks to humanity's greed, it kept them alive. Elves now, centuries after the race war, are a struggling race fighting for recovery in a world that has shown its brutality to the innocent. They have begun to intermingle with human society, which is helping their integration with the world, but the majority remain hidden in forests and wild locations. Their self-appointed leaders of the Wood Elves hold a dictatorship over their populace, yet despite their strict and uncompromising regime, their recovery has been faster than the other subraces. Pushed militarized strength has guided the Wood Elves to a strong and defensive society that bounced back from their cataclysm as a powerful force. This collective strength stands as a carefully balanced bastion against humanity's constant growth, but now instead of aggressive tactics at the woodland borders, treaties are carefully watched and upheld for the collection of lumber in most places, to the partial disdain of the Wood Elves as a whole. While within the forests and at the Wood Elf city, a collective resentment slowly brews. The population has grown weary of the council's overarching desire to breed only strong magics into their people, leading to families being sundered and children barely come of age to be expelled into the wild world. In other parts of Patria, the Elven subraces push their own beliefs and intentions, living in harmony with their selected regions and dealing with their own minor conflicts. Despite the multiple shatterings of their race, Elvenkind has survived and is beginning to flourish again, even if in a land that has certainly curtailed their collective might. They will continue to adapt with their otherworldly ability to evolve within a few generations to the world's ever-shifting scape, while their abilities with magic continue to proceed in leaps and bounds past what the other races are capable of at this time. Currently, their borders are protected with a woven and delicate tapestry of treaties and promises with the other races. The Elves have come to collectively learn that aggression at their borders breeds desperate and unthought actions in the other races that have shorter lives than they do. This, combined with the carefully placed ambassadors or spies, enable foreplanning around what other races intend, letting the Elves uphold peace as a race that has learnt of their mortality. The future for Elvenkind is shrouded in mystery. Will they preserve their beliefs in the Wood Elf courts, or will it explode in yet another war, sundering their peaceful nature further? Compared to the other races' faster breeding rate and shorter thought plans, will the Elves survive where humanity grows, where dwarves burrow, and where lizard people hunt? Will they fade to myth and legend in a world constantly proceeding towards modernism, or fight tooth and nail to be counted among the surviving groups that push into the future? What are your thoughts on the Elves as a whole? Are there any sub-races that intrigue you further? Is the race war, unexplored so far, something that would interest you in future videos? Inform me of your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for your time.